Buonasera, un caloroso saluto, ma in tutti i sensi, e benvenuti per questa importante iniziativa che consente al professor Mark Griffiths di donarci una Lectio Magistrali. Professor Mark Griffiths, professor in Nottingham Trent University, is a chartered psychologist and director of the International Gaming Research Unit. He mostly teaches in areas related to his research interest on various undergraduate and postgraduate psychology programs. His main teaching interests are in the areas of abnormal social and health psychology, with a particular emphasis on behavioral addictions, cyberpsychology, and the psychology of sexual behavior. In 2006, he was awarded of the British Psychology Society's highest teaching honour, Excellence in Teaching of Psychology Award. Professor Griffiths has held many major administrative roles since joining the university, including Head of Psychology Division, Psychology Research Coordinator, Social Policy Research Coordinator, and Psychology Postgraduate Coordinator. He is currently Psychology Research Coordinator. Professor Griffiths is also a gaming consultant and works with the gaming industry to promote responsible gambling, social responsibility, harm minimization, and player protection. He is also a freelance journalist and writes for many national and international newspapers and magazines. Professor Griffiths has also acted as a consultant for many government bodies, including the Gambling Commission, UK Home Office, Department of Culture, Media and Sport, etc., etc. He is giving keynote addresses to US National Academy of Science and the US National Center for Addiction. Professor Griffiths is one of the most high-profile media commentators and has been awarded a number of prizes for his scientific dissemination. A very big welcome to Professor Griffith. It's an honor for our university to host you, and it is, I don't know if it is the first time in Bari. Yes, it's so we hope it will be a big and interesting presence in our city. Passo ora la parola al rettore, professor Skender Topi della Università di Elbasan, con cui abbiamo appena inaugurato dei rapporti formali che saranno sempre più significativi di collaborazione didattica e scientifica. Prego, rettore.
Grazie, professor Trigiani. Io parlerò italiano, mi dispiace, però vedo che sono un ex alunno dell'Università di Bari. Mi piacerebbe parlare italiano. Grazie a tutti, un saluto a tutti i presenti, un ringraziamento particolare al professor Trigiani e alla professoressa Maria Sinatra per questo invito che si dà luogo a questo convegno importante. I problemi che si discutono, i temi che si discutono in questo convegno sono molto importanti. Anche il mio paese, anche se è un paese che è stata chiusa per 50 anni, in questi, dopo gli anni 90, i problemi di giochi sono un problema serio per le famiglie, per gli uomini, e penso che prenderò spunto da questo convegno oggi, che un domani, in collaborazione con il professor Trigiani, il professor Dammacco e la professoressa, anche il professor Mark Griffith, di realizzare un convegno di questo genere anche nelle nostre università. Penso che sarebbe una cosa molto importante. Come il professor Trigiani ha già detto, noi oggi stiamo qui con una delegazione dell'Università di Elbasan, con i due presidenti della Facoltà delle Scienze di Educazione, la professoressa Giumeri, professoressa Seidini, Imelda Seidini, preside della Facoltà di Economia. Siamo giunti a Bari dopo un incontro di 2 mesi fa con il Dipartimento delle Scienze Politiche, stiamo lavorando tra le nostre università a livello anche di dipartimenti, come il professor Trigiani ha già accennato un po', di fare dei lavori insieme partendo dalle nostre curricule, adattarsi a queste nostre curricule, quelle curricule dell'Università di Bari, perché noi stiamo sognando di entrare in Europa, ma per entrare in Europa ci vuole molto, bisogna lavorare, bisogna adattarsi alle regole dell'Europa. E noi oggi abbiamo deciso che per il prossimo anno accademico docenti dell'Università di Bari, proprio del Dipartimento del professor Trigiani, verranno a insegnare delle materie nelle nostre curriculum, soprattutto nei servizi sociali. Il progetto va avanti per il prossimo anno di lavorare, di fare un master congiunto. Abbiamo creato da tutte e due le parti il gruppo di lavoro che nei prossimi mesi lavoreranno e porteranno avanti questo progetto. Altri progetti che abbiamo con il professor D'Amaco, da 20 anni che lavoriamo, le nostre università, non solo l'Università di Elbasan, ma l'Università di Tirana, di Durazzo, di Scutari. Stiamo lavorando anche con un grande progetto con la Regione Puglia, che il professor D'Amaco ci ha dato delle idee, ci ha dato delle indicazioni, e i nostri gruppi delle nostre università stanno lavorando per portare avanti questo progetto. Da quello che si vede, l'Università di Bari, soprattutto per me che sono un ex alunno, che mi sono laureato, specializzato e dottorato presso questa università, ho il dovere, oggi che sono il rettore, che tutti i nostri rapporti che sono stati negli anni, di portarli avanti e di fare delle cose vere e concrete. E io credo molto nello staff dell'Università di Bari, credo molto, abbiamo anche la disponibilità del rettore dell'Università di Bari, che io ho incontrato quando è stato l'anno di inaugurazione dell'anno accademico. Anche lui ci ha dato tutte le disponibilità per collaborare con le nostre università. Io non ho niente da dire, perché i colleghi devono dire tutto sul specifico del convegno. Vi augurio un buon lavoro di proseguimento di questo convegno. Grazie a tutti.
Grazie Rettore Topi, che appunto è laureato e dottorato in medicina in questa università, quindi è una collaborazione che proseguirà nelle sue varie vesti, da studente a rettore. È un bel passo avanti. Bene, ora andiamo al clou del nostro incontro. Siamo tutti molto in attesa di sentire la Lectio Magistralis del professor Mark Griffiths, dal titolo Online Editions, Conceptualization, Debates and Controversies. Prego, professor Griffith.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me at the back? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much to Maria Sinatra for inviting me here today. It's actually very unusual for me to be sitting down and giving a talk. I've done hundreds and hundreds of talks, and maybe I've only ever sat down 3 times in 30 years giving a talk, so this will be quite unusual for me. I always start off, particularly with foreign audiences, by saying that I can speak at one of 3 speeds, which is fast, very fast, non-amphetamines. I will try to be slower today, but when I talk very slowly, I'm actually feel very unnatural. Anyone that knows my work knows that I'm probably addicted to publishing academic journal papers, which is just about the best addiction that you can have being an academic. What I'm going to talk to you about today, I think the first thing I'm going to talk about is what addiction is, or at least what addiction means to me, because every one of you in the room will have a different idea about what it means to be addicted to something, and there's bound to be some of you in the room that think there is no way that anyone can be addicted to, for instance, social networking or online gambling or online gaming, because it doesn't involve the ingestion of a psychoactive substance. But anyway, I'm going to talk to you very briefly about how I define addictions. I'm then very briefly going to talk about the general area of what I call technological addictions, and then talk about internet addiction, some of the generic risk factors that facilitate online and internet addictions, then talk about particularly internet addiction and online gambling addiction. Okay, so for me, and I've been asking these questions for 20 years now, I mean, many of the papers and chapters that I've published over the years, I always think that this whole area comes down to three particular questions. The first question is, what is addiction? The second thing is, do online addictions actually exist? And the third thing is, if online addictions exist, what are people actually addicted to? Okay, I'm going to start off by just trying to sum up how I conceptualize addiction. I don't care what the behavior is, whether that behavior is gambling, drug taking, cigarette smoking, playing online games, online gambling, is if any behavior does not fulfill these 6 components, then I basically don't actually operationally define it as a genuine addiction. So the first thing I will talk about here is what we call salience. And what I'm talking about here is that this is an activity that is so important in this person's life. It's basically the most important thing in this person's life, and they'll do it to the neglect of everything else. I wrote my PhD nearly 30 years ago on slot machine addiction, and some of the cases that I came across there absolutely convinced me that some people become addicted to gambling in the same way that other people become addicted to drugs, tobacco, and other more traditional addictions. Now, for me, when I talk about salience, what I'm actually talking about here is something, I say, it's all-encompassing. It completely takes over somebody's life. What I'm really talking about here is total preoccupation with the behavior. Now, sometimes when I speak at addiction conferences where people are researching into alcohol and drugs and tobacco, they often say to me, Mark, people who are addicted to alcohol or heroin or cocaine, these people are not totally preoccupied. They don't do it all the time. And I agree with that, because people don't sit around all day mainlining heroin. Okay, so what I did in 2005, I introduced a concept called reverse salience, and this was particularly in relation to drug addictions. Reverse salience basically means is that a person can be addicted to a particular drug, but they're not aware of how addicted they are until that drug is taken away from them. So for instance, I could be an alcoholic. Okay, this drink right at the front here, this could actually be neat gin, neat vodka, and you would be none the wiser because my drug of choice is right in front of me. The whole thing about drug addictions is that people can do these behaviors concurrently with other things. So I could quite easily be an alcoholic but give this lecture at the same time. I would find it very hard as a gambling addict to play a slot machine in front of you and give this lecture at the same time. I'd find it very hard as a sex addict to have sex in front of you now and give this lecture at the same time. Now, I'm being facetious to make a point, is that behavioural addictions are what I call all-encompassing. They basically take all available time away from other things. And I have met people who are addicted alcoholics. So it's quite easy to be an alcoholic but also a gambling addict, because people do have the capacity to drink and gamble at the same time. But when it comes to behavioural addictions, when people talk to me and say that there are people who are addicted to sex and work, I would say that's impossible unless somebody is working in the pornographic industry, because if you're working all the time, you can't be having sex all the time. If you're having sex all the time, you can't be working all the time. So that's my first component, salience. The second component is what I call mood modification. And what I'm talking about here is that addictions, regardless of whether they're chemical or behavioural, they give you a consistent and reliable shift in mood state. And what I find really interesting about addictions is there's actually a paradoxical phenomenon going on here, is that people not only can get high, aroused, buzzed up, excited about their activity, but they can also do the exact opposite. They can tranquilize, they can relax, they can de-stress, they can numb with exactly the same behavior or exactly the same substance. But what I think is crucial to all addictions is that it's this consistent and reliable shift in mood state. And research also shows that people can use behaviors and substances at different times of the day to get completely different effects. So for nicotine addicts, the first cigarette they have in the morning might be that nicotine rush that gets them going for the day. But by the end of the day, people are not using nicotine to get excited and to get that rush. They're using it to de-stress, relax, and tranquilize their day-to-day behavior. The third component is tolerance. Now, particularly in chemical addictions, this means needing more and more of a particular substance to get those same initial mood-modifying effects. Now, when it comes to behaviors, I mean, for instance, I've spent a lot of my life researching gambling, is that what we see when people become tolerant to gambling is they build up the amount of time that they spend gambling, but they also build up the amount of money that they bet on each individual gamble. When I look at my work on online gaming, it's not just about people building up the amount of time that they spend on games. It might be things like getting better and faster hardware and software to play the latest games, having to have the latest games. Basically building their behavior up to such a point where it completely takes over all of their waking life. I also think that withdrawal symptoms are absolutely critical to addictions. If we're going to call something an addictive behavior, then I think addictive behaviors all have withdrawal symptoms when people are stopped from engaging in their behavior. So for a typical drug addict that is unable to take their heroin or their cocaine or drink alcohol, is that they will, on a psychological level, feel more moody, feel more irritable, feel more anxious, feel more frustrated. On a physiological level, these people will have stomach cramps, nausea, hand sweats, the shakes. But I can tell you now, particularly from my work on gambling, is that gamblers who are genuinely addicted to gambling also have similar types of withdrawal effects. And I've also found it in some of the work that I've done on online gaming addiction as well. These people do have both psychological and physiological withdrawal symptoms. But the single most important aspect of these 6 criteria is the 5th one. And this is what I call conflict. And what I'm talking about here is an activity that is so conflicting in this person's life that they spend basically all of their time, and it conflicts with their job or their education, depending on what age they are. It compromises their relationships, both with their loved ones, their family, their friends. But also, these people experience what I call intrapsychic conflict within themselves. They know that they're doing this activity too much. They know that they should try and cut down and stop, but they feel unable to do so, and they experience a subjective loss of control. Now, one of the things I would say about conflict, and this being the most important factor, is that I've done a lot of research showing, particularly in gaming addictions, there are people who can play very, very excessively on games, but in fact they seem to have little or few negative consequences in their life. Okay, so the journalists often ask me, Mark, what is the difference between a healthy, excessive enthusiasm and an addiction? And for me, it's very, very simple. Excessive, healthy enthusiasms add to life, and addictions take away from it. And on that very simple criterion, most people that I've come across who are excessive gamers are not addicted to gaming. Yes, they play a lot, and yes, it has some negative impacts on their life, but they do not fulfill all of my criteria for addiction. And I'll just give you an example. Back in 2010, I published a very simple paper, and it was just an account of 2 case studies of 2 gamers who each of them played up to 14 hours a day, every single day, on an online computer game. Now, what I argued in this particular paper, and it's now actually one of my most highly cited papers, is that these 2 activities, even though they were behaviorally identical, only one of them was actually addicted to playing games. Now, you might say, how can that be if they were both playing up to 14 hours a day? Well, the first guy was somebody who was 21 years old. He'd just left university. He didn't have a partner. He didn't have a job. As I say, he basically, from the moment he got up in the morning till when he went to bed at night, he played all day on World of Warcraft. Okay, so he was somebody that was lauded within this game. He was respected in this game. He was leader of his guild in the game. This was an activity where he had very high self-esteem with the game, and basically this was a life-affirming activity. He quite readily admitted that World of Warcraft was the most important thing in his life. Yes, it was a salient activity, but he also said, I don't get withdrawal symptoms when I don't play. Okay, I've built up tolerance over time, playing more and more, but that's nothing to do with addiction. Most importantly, he said, I do not have any negative consequences in my life because at the moment I don't have a job, I don't have a partner, I don't have children. Now you might be saying, well, the reason this person doesn't have children, doesn't have a job, doesn't have a partner is because they're playing this game. Well, he said to me that that was his life choice at that particular time. The interesting thing was he met his now wife playing the online game. He now married somebody that he met in that game. He now works in the computer game industry. What was very interesting is when he met his partner, his now wife, offline, is that the playing just completely diminished. It was quite obvious that he could cut down or stop any time he wanted to, and it was a deliberate choice on his part to play that game basically for up to 14 hours a day every single day. Now, I compared him with a 38-year-old man who was married with 2 children and had a high-pressure job in London. This was a man who used to get his wife to ring in to his employer and say, "I'm sorry, my husband can't come into work today, but he's ill." He wasn't ill, he was sitting playing a game called EverQuest. EverQuest is a game that people who play it call it Evercrack. They say it's one of the most addictive online games out there. This was a guy that his wife eventually turned around to him and said, "If you do not stop playing this silly game," and that was her words, "this silly game, I'm going to leave you and I'm going to take our children with us." That is exactly what she did. He also got sacked from his job because he didn't turn up, and basically this whole game ruined his life. The only way he could cope with the fact that he'd lost his job, lost his wife, lost his children, was to basically carry on playing the game. It was a kind of vicious circle. Now, in terms of my 6 components, the first guy that I talked about only actually fulfilled and endorsed 3 of those criteria. So by my criteria, he was not addicted to the game. Yes, there was some negative impacts on it in his life, but really he was saying to me there were very few, and he would not call himself an addict. The second guy that I've just described to you endorsed all 6 of these criteria, and for me he would be genuinely addicted to that particular online game. So the point that I would like to make is that just because somebody does things all the time does not necessarily make it an addiction, and also addiction occurs in a context. Okay, and for me, if there are no negative detrimental effects as a result of engaging in the behavior, then for me, that is not a genuine addiction. And then finally, the 6th component there is relapse. And again, from all the work that I've done on addictions, and whether it's social networking addiction, whether it's online gaming addiction, whether it's sex addiction, what we typically see is somebody who has managed to give up for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, even 2 years, is that once they go back to that particular behavior, they tend to go straight back into the addictive cycles they were in before. And there's a really lovely quote from the American author Mark Twain, who wrote the novel Tom Sawyer. Mark Twain said, in relation to smoking and relapse, he said, "Giving up smoking is really easy to do. I've done it hundreds of times." And again, for me, smoking is the classic relapse behavior, but we also find it in more, if you like, in more, not just traditional addictions, but also in behavioral addictions as well. So if you take nothing away from today's lecture, I would just say, for me, this is the most important slide I've put up today, because this is the bedrock of my whole career. There are loads of psychologists who disagree with me, particularly people who work in behavioral addictions, and say that I should not include things like withdrawal and tolerance as key components to addiction. But I think if we're going to call these behaviors addictions, then we have to use the terminology and we have to use the signs and symptoms that we find in more traditional addictions. Okay, I'll just spend one slide just talking about what I call technological addictions. Back in 1995, I published a paper, and it was just called simply Technological Addictions. I had real trouble in trying to publish this paper because all the journals that I sent it to just said, you know, this is just a stupid concept. You know, there's no such thing as a technology or a technological addiction. Now, I did eventually get it published in a very obscure psychology journal, and again, it's actually now one of my most cited papers ever, and I think a lot of people have never actually even read the original paper that I first published in 1995. They see it referenced in other papers, and they often quote it, but you know, it's something that I don't think many people actually read at the time. What I tried to argue in that paper, and it was based on my work on video game addiction and slot machine addiction, and some other work, not that I did, but other people did work on television addiction, is that I came up with this idea of that some addictions people could have addictions to various forms of technology. And I operationalized a technological addiction as something that involved a non-chemical behavioral addiction that involved excessive human-machine interaction but which also fulfilled my 6 components of addiction. And one of the things I would say about technology, and whether it's a computer game, whether it's a slot machine, is that there are lots of rewarding and inducing behaviors that you find in these particular forms of technology that basically lead to repetitive and habitual behavior. And in a small minority of individuals, this leads to addictive behavior. So what I'm going to do now is talk more generally about internet addiction and gaming addiction. Okay? Now, some of you in the room might not realize, but in 2013, the latest version, the latest 5th version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders included something called internet gaming disorder in its appendix. It was actually in section 3 of the DSM-5. And this was basically seen as something, as a phenomenon that was emerging, and that more research needed to be done, particularly at an epidemiological level and at a kind of neurochemical and neurobiological level. What was interesting about that particular version of the DSM is that gambling disorder, as it's now known, gambling disorder had basically been in the DSM going way back to 1980. But up until 2013, it had always been seen as a disorder of impulse control. But in 2013, basically there was a subgroup, a working party, that actually decided that gambling disorder was a genuine behavioral addiction. This was the first time in any kind of recognized psychiatric text that gambling addiction, even though I'd been talking about gambling addiction for 30 years, this was the first time in a psychiatric text is that gambling disorder was seen as a genuine addiction. What was interesting was that internet gaming disorder was also classed as a potential behavioral addiction as well. Now, for those of us that are working in the field, in the run-up, particularly in the years 2010 to 2013, lots of us who worked in the field of online addiction were contacted by the working group that was looking at whether behavioral addictions do and can exist. And we argued to them that we thought there was enough evidence surrounding gaming disorder to include it in the DSM-5. What was interesting was that there was also some debate about whether internet addiction in and of itself should be included in the DSM-5, but the people who put that section together in the end decided that internet addiction disorder was not a phenomenon in its own right. So this group, the Substance Use Disorder Work Group, they recommended that the DSM-5 include this subtype of problematic internet use that they called internet gaming disorder. Now, from my point, if you actually read the DSM-5, there are 2 things that I find staggering in reading the DSM-5 criteria and all the related literature around internet gaming disorder. The first thing is that internet gaming disorder not only includes online gambling, but also includes online gaming, but also includes online video gaming as offline video gaming, which I find bizarre. Why would you call something internet gaming disorder if it includes a disorder that doesn't involve the use of playing something online? So for me, it should simply be called gaming disorder. And in fact, that's what the World Health Organization have actually said, that in the next version of their international classification of diseases, they are going to include gaming disorder, and they will say that it can actually occur both online and or offline. The second thing about internet gaming disorder, if you read the text in the DSM-5, what it actually says is that internet gaming disorder is the same thing as internet addiction disorder. And for me, somebody that spent, in fact, I was the very first person in 1995 to publish an article on internet addiction. Internet addiction and online gaming addiction are 2 completely different things as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I've almost come to the decision now is that when we talk about internet addiction, what we're really talking about is what I call generalized internet addiction, where people just live out the whole of their lives online, doing lots and lots of different things online. And in fact, for most people, that might actually be one preoccupying behavior, whether it's online gaming, online sex, online shopping, or online gambling. Now, if we just briefly look at the 9 criteria that were in the DSM-5 for internet gaming disorder, All I want to point out here is the 9 criteria map directly onto the 6 components that I just outlined. So for instance, the first criterion, that internet gaming disorder consists of, 1, a preoccupation with internet games. For me, this is an example of salience. The second thing they say is withdrawal symptoms when internet gaming is taken away. Well, that's clearly withdrawal in relation to the 6 components I outlined. The need to spend increasing amounts of time engaged in internet gaming. That is just a clear example of tolerance. The fourth one there, unsuccessful attempts to control participation in internet gaming. That's actually, there's 2 things there. There's what I would actually argue that's relapse, but also loss of control as well. And I actually subsume loss of control under the conflict component in my model. The 5th one there, loss of interest in hobbies and entertainment as a result of and with exception of internet gaming. That's an example of conflict. And in fact, there's loads of different examples of conflict here. Another 3 examples here in the 4 remaining criteria. So things like a continued excessive use of internet games despite knowledge of psychosocial problems, that's clearly a conflicting activity. Deception of family members, therapists or others regarding the amount of time that you spend internet gaming, that again, that is conflict. The 9th one there, which I think is the most important one, loss of significant relationship, job or educational or career opportunity because of participation in internet games. Again, that is clearly conflicting in somebody's life. And then we've got the last one there, criterion 8, which is an example of mood modification, using the use of the internet gaming to escape or relieve a negative mood state. I actually think it goes further than that. I would actually argue that people who use games to get a high or buzzed up or aroused should also be included as somebody trying to modify their mood. Now, these 9 criteria have led to massive debates in the literature. Okay, there are whole papers and papers arguing about whether these 9 criteria genuinely diagnose internet gaming disorder. There are big debates about whether things like withdrawal symptoms and tolerance should be part of these 9 criteria. There are debates saying that the criteria are too simplistic, they're too generalistic, they're not specific enough to internet gaming disorder because these have been modelled on other types of addictive behaviour, including gambling and psychoactive substance abuse. But I will come back to that in a minute. I also think another important issue to talk about here is the idea of why is it that people become, if you like, attracted, seduced, and eventually, in a small minority of cases, genuinely addicted to online behaviours. Now, I think there's a whole list of generic factors that come into play, but these are I think some of the more important ones. So the first 3 there, this is what's known and what Al Cooper back in 1999 called the AAA engine. He said that access, affordability and anonymity were the 3 key psychological factors that were instrumental in people becoming addicted to things like online sex, online gaming and online gambling. Obviously, access is a really, really important characteristic. You know, back in 1995, when I first started researching on internet addiction, very few people were addicted to the internet because there was very, very little access to it. Very few people could afford to pay by the minute on modems back in 1995. Now, the interesting thing was when I first started in this area, I'd say this was 22 years ago, I used to get letters every week from parents saying my son has become addicted to the internet. And when I wrote back to them and said, why do you think that? They would always write back and say, because this activity is costing us too much money. It's costing us thousands of pounds every month because they were playing by the minute on the internet. Now, I don't get any letters or emails from parents saying that they spend too much money on it. What I get now is from parents is that their kids are spending too much time on the internet and it's taking away from their education, it's taking away from their social development. So access is a really important concept here when we look at online addictions, but of course it's not the only thing. Affordability, that second issue, is, and it's become less of a factor now, but it was certainly a factor back in the late 1990s. And then we've got the issue of anonymity. Again, for me, I think anonymity is absolutely crucial in terms of people living out their lives online. Is most people think the internet is the most anonymous place that they can do things. But of course, it's the most unanonymous place that I can think of. Okay, this is a medium that tracks every single keystroke that you make. So for instance, I do a lot of work now where I've got access to behavioural tracking data sets where we follow gamblers over many years. We know every single keystroke that they do. We know every single game that they play. We know exactly how much they spend on every single game. This is this kind of information. If we had access to this for gaming addiction, for social networking addiction, it would totally revolutionise doing research in this area, because almost we wouldn't even have to ask people about what they do online anymore, because the information is already there in terms of this behavioural tracking data. So the thing about what I would say is, so it's not actually the anonymity that's important, it's actually the perceived anonymity by the individual using it. And people who talk to other people online, of course, everything is recorded, everything is retrievable. It is not anonymous at all, but the key thing is that people think it's anonymous because you can't actually see another person interacting face to face. This is an environment that's non-threatening, it's non-alienating, it's non-stigmatizing, and this is why people find it an attractive and seductive medium to carry out lots of different activities. Obviously connected with accessibility is that the internet has become more convenient. Also, we know from lots of research, particularly done in the early 2000s, is we know that the internet is a very disinhibiting environment. People lower their emotional guard when they're online. People become more truthful and honest when they're online. Okay? People fall in love online quicker than they do offline. And this is all because of the dynamics of the internet and that perceived anonymity connected with the disinhibition effect. Also, I think online it provides a fantastic medium for people to escape. And we know when it comes to addictions is that having an escape-like quality is a very reinforcing and rewarding feature. And then, of course, this is not a psychological factor, but this is more of a kind of day-to-day cultural factor, is that the internet has become socially acceptable. When I started working on internet addiction back in 1995, people found it absolutely stupid that people could meet each other online and end up having a relationship with them. These people were called anoraks or nerds or geeks. Now, of course, is that the internet is another tool in our social armory. It's become a way that we do our shopping, the way that we book our holidays, the way that we do insurance, the way that we work, the way that we game, the way that we gamble. Okay, the internet is now basically people can live out their lives online because of all these generic factors. Okay, so I'm now going to briefly talk about internet addiction. Okay, now can I just say I'm quite skeptical of the concept of internet addiction, and I will tell you why a bit later on. That's not to mean that I don't think it's useful work that's going on. But for me, when I talk about internet addiction, really what I'm talking about are people who basically spend all their time online, okay, and that they do it to the neglect of everything else. Obviously, I spend a vast proportion of my daily working life online, but it's to do with my job. It's functional. There is no negative detrimental effects by the fact that I excessively use the internet. So again, I want to return to the point that doing something excessively does not mean that it's bad. When it becomes bad is when it starts to impact negatively on other areas of people's lives. So I just briefly want to talk about a couple of literature reviews that we've done over the past few years. The first major one we did was published in 2014. And what we did here is that we basically looked at every large-scale survey piece of work that had looked at internet addiction over the previous 2 decades. And what we particularly wanted to do was only look at those studies that had at least 1,000 participants in those studies. Okay, now, lots of those studies, they were not nationally representative data, but they did have, some of them had very, very big sample sizes. So we reviewed 68 epidemiological studies during that period, and the first thing that we would say is that there was absolutely no gold standard of what internet addiction really is. Every single one of those papers was using different criteria, different screening instruments, actually just operationally defining internet addiction in very, very different ways across each one of those studies. Also, I've put on the slide here, at that particular time there were 21 different screening instruments being used in those 68 studies. And I can tell you now there's at least another 3 or 4 instruments that have been developed, including 2 of my own, since that 2014 date. Basically, most of these 21 screening instruments, they were using the criteria for either substance addictions or gambling addictions and basically adapting it for use with looking at the time spent online, the activities online and the resulting problems online. Again, if you look at the difference in prevalence rates, okay, this shows you why people seem to be measuring different things across all these studies. Okay, so in that particular literature review, we found that the range of prevalence rates of internet addiction range between 0.8%, so less than 1%, actually here in Italy, right up to nearly 27% that we found in one study in Hong Kong. Again, if we kind of mine down and look at, what are the kind of some of the predicting factors and the associated factors amongst those 68 studies, basically what we found that internet addiction had a relationship with being male, so females were less likely to be addicted to the internet. The type of internet use was very important, so particularly online gaming and online sex seems to have more relationship with generalized internet addiction. There was various psychosocial factors and comorbid symptoms that were associated with internet addiction, so things like low self-control, impulsivity, sensation seeking. But again, I think that some of these kind of personality factors weren't actually related to the internet so much as to the behaviors that they were doing on the internet, like sexual behavior, like shopping behavior, like gaming behavior, and like gambling behavior. So the results of that literature review basically indicated there did seem to be some core symptoms that every single one of those 68 studies seemed to say that was relevant to internet addiction. So for instance, compulsive use of the internet, negative outcomes as a result of spending time on the internet, and also the salience that the internet was the single most important thing in those people's life. So this does imply that internet addiction, if it exists, is some kind of syndrome where people have lots of co-occurring behaviors, but there could be big differences in terms of the peripheral types of activity that were shown. Now in 2015, myself and two of my colleagues, two of my ex-PhD students, Daria Kuss and Hallie Pontes, we did another review where we just looked purely at nationally representative samples that had been published since we published the first review. Okay, and we found that there were 14 studies that had used nationally representative samples. So these were, if you like, much better quality data. These were not self-selected samples. These were totally representative of particular age groups in that particular country. And what we found was, again, large difference in terms of prevalence rates. So here the range between 0% from one study we found in Iran up to 18.7% to a study that was in Taiwan. Now, interestingly, I'll just mention that I've been to Southeast Asia 4 times over the last 18 months. So I've been to Taiwan, to South Korea, to Singapore, and to Macau. And one thing that was absolutely abundant when I went out on these trips is that life online is just absolutely endemic in Southeast Asian countries. Now, what I also found was that, so for instance, when I was being driven around Seoul in South Korea, I was with a member of the government, and she was telling me that she was pointing out all the online addiction treatment centres that were in Seoul. And I said I couldn't believe this, because in England we have got one online addiction treatment centre, one for the whole of our country. So one online addiction treatment centre for 68 million people. Yet she pointed out to me 6 online addiction treatment centres just in the centre of Seoul. Now, when I started talking about, why was there so many online addiction treatment centres, what she told me is that basically any activity in South Korea that is not about education and is not about the family, it is pathologized by parents. So in fact, just playing 1 hour a day on a computer game, okay, was seen as problematic. Okay, when you played on a computer game, instead of interacting with your brothers, your sisters, your family, it was pathologized. So when people from Taiwan, from South Korea, when they fill out these questionnaires and it says, as a result of your gaming, have you had conflicts with the family? These people were saying yes, but in fact, if you transpose the same behavior to a Western culture, is that most children would say, no, there's no problems, because most parents do not mind their children playing half an hour or an hour a day. So I think that one of the reasons there are very high prevalence rates in places in Southeast Asia, and particularly Taiwan, is because of the cultural, the cultural aspect of the fact that anything that doesn't work for education and for the family is pathologized. And again, in that same study, we looked at 3 three things particularly. We wanted to look at, for instance, is there any relationship between age and using the internet? Okay, now what this table here basically shows is that all the top studies, what they show is that the younger that you are, the more likely you are to be addicted to the internet. But I also ought to point out there's one there's one study that shows, in fact, the opposite, is that the older you are, the more likely you are to be addicted to the internet. And remember, these are nationally representative samples and not self-selected samples. But also, we've got 4 studies at the bottom there that actually showed no relationship between age and internet addiction whatsoever. We were also interested in what the age that people started their internet use. And again, what we found here amongst nationally representative samples is we found here 4 studies that showed a positive relationship. The younger that you start engaging in the internet use, the more likely you are to have an internet addiction. But we also found 5 studies, 5 representative studies where in fact that wasn't the case. There was actually no significant difference whatsoever. However, the one variable that we've come up in every single study that is ever looked at is the amount of time correlates with internet addiction. So again, looking at nationally representative studies, every single study that's used a nationally representative sample has found that the longer that you spend engaged online, the more likely it is correlated with internet addiction. However, I just want to say what I said before, is that doing something excessively doesn't mean it's bad. There are lots of people who have excessive internet use, excessive gaming use, and are quite clearly not addicted to the internet or the games that they play on the internet. However, research consistently shows that there is a positive correlation between the amount of time spent and internet addiction. So again, when you're developing measures to look at internet addiction, the amount of time that you spend is a good variable to look at in terms of things like convergent validity. Okay, still keeping on the issue of internet addiction. Okay, now back in 1999, some of you will know the work of Kimberly Young. Now, Kimberly Young is often seen as the person who first published on internet addiction. In fact, I had 2 articles before she had her first paper published on internet addiction. But she was a pioneer and still is a pioneer in the area of excessive and problematic internet use. However, we actually fell out. We'd been corresponding online for 3 or 4 years. And in 1999, Kimberly Young published a paper in which she said there were 5 different types of internet addiction. She said that what she described as cybersexual addictions, so these are addictions where people were compulsively using pornographic sites and having cyber sex with people. She said there were cyber relationship addictions where people were effectively over-involved in relationships they had online, particularly romantic relationships. She also said there were what she called net compulsions. So these are people that were addicted to gambling online, gaming online, day trading online, shopping online. She also said there was a category that she defined called information overload, which basically these were people who are addicted to typing in things into online search engines, constantly Googling all the time, although back in 1999 Google really wasn't a major player back then. And then finally, quite bizarrely, the last one, she said there was something she called computer addiction, and this was particularly relevant to people who played games, and she gave the example of card games and solitaire on their personal computer. This doesn't even involve the internet, so I found it quite bizarre that one of the 5 types of internet addiction involved an activity that wasn't even done online. It was just something you did on your computer. But I had really big problems with this typology because for me, it's only the 3rd typology there, what Kimberly Young describes as net compulsions, okay, that really are about genuine addictions. And for me, it's not even about being addicted to the internet, okay? And I criticised this and I said that nearly all of those people in all of those typologies were not addicted to the internet. Okay, basically nearly all of the people she talked about, whether it was sex, whether it was relationships, or whether it was activities like gambling, day trading, and gaming, is that basically the internet was a medium to fuel these other behaviours. It wasn't the internet that was addictive, it was the activities that you actually did on the internet. So there was a big, there was a difference there, what I described as being addicted to the internet rather than being addicted to activities on the internet. So for me, for most people who, and if you look in the literature, when people talk about internet addiction, really what they're describing is not internet addiction, they're talking about addictions on the internet. And addictions on the internet is not the same as addictions to the internet. Okay, the internet is just the medium which fuels these other addictive behaviors. And what I've argued in my writings is that the internet, because it's 24/7, 365 days of the year, it is a risk factor for people who are susceptible and vulnerable to developing online addictions, because the medium is highly accessible, highly affordable, convenient, and all the other factors that I outlined earlier. Having said that, myself and Kimberly Young, we've both actually published case studies in the literature where people did seem to be genuinely addicted to the internet itself, that their whole life was played out online. And when they were, basically when they couldn't be online, they had withdrawal symptoms, you know, they had all the kind of loss reactions that you'd find to more traditional addictions. Now again, if we look, what is it about these activities that are online? What we found was that things like internet chat rooms, playing role-playing games, these are actually activities where people take on other social personas. They actually become something they're not. The whole thing about being on the internet is you can create anything you want. On the internet, I can be a 23-year-old Baywatch hunk of the month. I can be anything because it's totally dictated by what I type on the screen. And when it comes to online role-playing games and internet chat, is that these are ideal types of behavior that people psychologically change their whole persona, and that in and of itself becomes rewarding and reinforcing. And I've described these in some of my early papers going back to the late 90s and early 2000s as these people being engaged in text-based virtual realities. Okay, and what is happening here on a psychological level is that people are engaging in what I would call alternative realities. They're becoming something they're not. And it's particularly the factors of being totally immersed in the activity and the perceived anonymity that seem crucial to these kind of alternative types of lifestyle. So now I'm going to end now by just talking a bit about online gaming addiction. And I've probably published more papers on online gaming addiction than anybody else in the world now. I started publishing these type of papers back in the early 2000s. And again, I just want to point out a few of the really big literature reviews that we've just done. We now know there are now well over 100 epidemiological studies that have looked at gaming addiction online. And what all those papers have kind of argued is that online gaming goes from obviously no online gaming to social gaming to heavy gaming to problematic gaming through to pathological and addictive gaming. Basically, addiction to gaming is on a continuum. We also know from those 100 plus studies there are some personality factors that tend to be associated with playing games, things like introversion, sensation seeking, neuroticism, state trait anxiety, etc. However, of course, there are many, many different types of game. It could well be that somebody is very introverted playing one game, but in fact, if they played another game, they'd have to be more extroverted to play it. So even though we found some consistent personality traits, what the literature has tended to do is to say all of these games are very, very similar. But of course, when we talk about online games, there are online role-playing games, there are online first-person shooter games, there are online battle arena games, and there are online real-time strategy games. Those four genres in and of themselves are very, very different in terms of the type of player who might play those in the first place. So we have to start becoming more nuanced in our research and actually look at excessive, problematic and addictive gaming, not just of all games, but different types of games. But I would estimate that around about 85%, if not more, of all the studies that have looked at online games have only looked at online role-playing games. And in fact, we need to do far more research, particularly on, for instance, online battle arena games. So games like League of Legends, that is now the most popular online game in the world, but it's not a role-playing game, it's a MOBA game. It's a massively online battle arena game. We also found, one of the things we found in our literature reviews is that people talk about online gaming addiction, but they use lots and lots of different words to describe what they feel is the same phenomena. So things like video game addiction, problematic video game playing, online gaming addiction, they're all used interchangeably, and probably more importantly, just like the research that's been done on internet addiction, there are many, many different screens that are being used to assess whether somebody has an addiction or has a problem with online gaming. Now again, I actually think that most of these instruments is that what they're actually assessing is not addiction or problems, is that what they're really assessing is preoccupation. Now, some of that preoccupying activity may well be problematic, but the thing is here, if you look at some of the prevalence rates, so amongst young people, so when I say young people, I mean age between 16 to 25, we typically find in these studies prevalence rates of problematic gambling ranging between 8% and 12%. For younger age groups, between the 10 and 16 years of age group, we find prevalence rates of between 2 and 5%. Now, even if we take, let's say the figure was 2%. If 2% of all children were genuinely addicted to video games, then I would expect to see video game addiction treatment centres in every single major city in the Western world. But that is not what we've got. There are quite clearly a small but significant minority of children and adolescents who quite clearly have problems with their gaming, but I don't think it's anywhere near as high as, for instance, 5 or even 12% amongst that age group up to 25. I think the screening instruments are just not sensitive enough to pick up genuine addiction. Now, if we look at what I would say is the best quality data we've got, I mean, the DSM-5 said in 2013, we cannot include internet gaming disorder in the DSM-5 unless we have large-scale epidemiological studies. Well, in fact, to date, I think these are the only large-scale epidemiological studies that have been published to date. So there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 studies here. So again, the very first one we had back in 2009, I think this has very little face validity. Doug Gentile said that nearly 9% of all American teenagers aged between 10 and 18 were addicted to playing video games. I mean, to me, there's just no face validity to that. Yes, I can believe that 10% of the American teenage population are totally preoccupied with playing games, but it quite clearly is not having a negative detrimental effect in a large majority of that, because if it was, as I say, there would be video game addiction treatment centres up and down America. I think what's far more realistic, and I think one of the best studies done, was one done by Rabin et al. Back in 2015, and they found that 1.2% of German adolescents aged between 13 and 18 had an addiction to gaming. I think that has far more credibility and face validity. Again, some Dutch research in 2 particular samples showed that around about 5.5% of Dutch people, young people and adults, had an addiction to video games. A study that I was involved in Hungary, we found that 4.3% of a nationally representative sample of adolescents aged 15 to 16 had video game addiction. Another study that I was involved in Norway, we found, and this was actually amongst representative gamers. This is not representative population as a whole, and again, I think this is far more realistic. So we found amongst people who are actually gamers, and of course not all Norwegians are gamers, we found just 1.5% were genuinely addicted to games amongst that gaming population. Another study, which was actually a multicultural study done across 7 different European countries. Again, I think this has more face validity. Around about 1.5% across 7 different countries was the rate of the prevalence of video game addiction. And again, a study that I've just been involved in that we've done in Slovenia, we found that 2.5% of Slovenian adolescents aged 12 to 16 had a video game addiction problem. But as I say, these are our best quality data, and even amongst these studies here, we're still finding quite big differences between the ranges in terms of the prevalence rates. Obviously, one of the reasons I think there are big differences in these prevalence rates are because of the screens that are used. So back in 2013, myself and some Australian and Dutch colleagues, we did a really big systematic review of every single instrument up to 2013 that had looked at gaming addiction. What we found in that particular study at that time were that there were 18 different screening instruments, and there are at least 5 more that have been developed since this particular paper. But in that paper, we looked at 63 different quantitative studies, okay, and involved a sample size of just below 60,000 individuals. And what we were obviously particularly looking at is the similarities and dissimilarities, both methodologically and conceptually, between all these 18 different screening instruments. What we've found in the review, we said that there are some strengths of the instruments and there were also some big weaknesses. Now, in terms of the strengths of most of the instruments that have been validated, was the brevity and ease of scoring on those scales. Most of them actually had excellent psychometric properties, including convergent validity and internal consistency. And we argued that those particular types of study that had these robust, psychometrically robust scales, is that they would aid us in development of standardized norms particularly for adolescent populations, because it's amongst adolescents where most of these screens were used previously. However, and this is a real downside, and I think it's a weakness in the whole area, not just in online gaming addiction, but in internet addictions more generally, and in looking at things like online sex addiction and online gambling addiction. Basically what we find is that the core indicators of addiction across all these different screens are different. Okay, although there are some that overlap, I mean, there are some screens out there that actually show no overlap whatsoever with other addiction screening instruments. They're using completely different kind of core criteria. There's a general lack of any temporal dimension. Okay, so in the DSM-5, I think it says that you have to have had these consequences for a year or more to be diagnosed as having internet gaming disorder. Most of the gaming screens actually don't even mention any temporal dimension whatsoever. You could have just been doing this for the last week and you would be classed as having a problematic video game problem if you just endorse yes or no to some of the screens. Having said that, I do think that when it comes to gaming addiction, is that the onset is actually quite quick, and that even within 3 or 4 months, there are some people who can become genuinely addicted to online games, and therefore I think the DSM-5 criteria is too strict in saying that it has to be a whole year of this activity before somebody can be defined as having a problem. We also found there were very inconsistent cutoff rates, even using the same instrument. So some people using the same instrument would say that we classed anyone who scored 3 or more, or 4 or more, or 5 or more out of 9 as being addicted to a video game. And again, that means you're comparing apples with oranges rather than apples with apples. We found that there were very poor and or inadequate inter-rater reliabilities on these particular screening instruments, and there was untested and inconsistent dimensionality, particularly because all the core criteria were different on lots of the different screens. And this is my penultimate slide, okay? I've just published a review with Hallie Pontes and Daria Kuss. And now this quote I'm just about to read out was from a literature review we did in 2012, but in fact our new 2017 review, which basically looks at all the papers published on the neurobiology of internet gaming and internet gaming addiction, internet addiction and internet gaming addiction since 2012, this conclusion still holds true even as of today. So what we concluded was that when it comes to neurobiology of internet addiction and internet gaming, these studies provide compelling evidence for the similarities between different types of addictions, notably substance-related addictions and internet and gaming addiction on a variety of levels. On the molecular level, internet addiction is characterized by an overall reward deficiency that entails decreased dopaminergic activity. On a level of neural circuitry, internet and gaming addiction leads to neuroadaptation and structural changes that occur as a consequence of prolonged increased activity in brain areas associated with addiction. And on a behavioral level, internet and gaming addicts appear to be constricted with regards to cognitive functioning in various domains. So in terms of my conclusions, okay, what I've tried to argue today, I do think that based on how I conceptualize addiction and how I conceptualize online gaming addiction and other online addictions, internet addictions do appear to exist, but it depends on how you define addiction in the first place. Because of course, if I defined addiction as involving the ingestion of a psychoactive substance like alcohol, like tobacco, like heroin, then there's not a single online addiction could be classified as a genuine addiction. The second thing is that although the time, as I've said, the time spent online does correlate with online addictions, okay, we can have excessive use without it being necessarily problematic. I do think that based on the literature, the medium is actually more harmful for some types of individual. So there are susceptible individuals, and I do think youth, so those aged between, say, 8 to 18, are probably more susceptible to developing online addictions than we find in adult samples. Most research that's been published to date suggests that internet addictions are very specific. So when we talk about internet addiction, I think when people fill out the questionnaires on internet addiction, they actually do it in relation to their most favoured activity, whether that's online gaming, online gambling, online shopping, or online sex. And really what we should be talking about is internet-related addiction rather than internet addiction. And my final conclusion is that I do think that most of the scales that we've got that assesses any type of internet-related addiction, I think they're far too crude, and that most of them actually measure and assess preoccupation with the internet. But my conclusion would be is that for a tiny minority, I do think the internet may be addictive. And I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Griffiths, for your very important and precious lecture. Passo la parola a professoressa Sinatra, che condurrà un po' le domande che vorranno essere fatte da qualcuno di voi. C'è la traduzione del collega che è accanto al professor Griffiths, potrà tradurre in inglese le vostre domande. Ricordo anche che nei prossimi giorni sarà tutta questa Lectio Magistralis presente sul Dispo web, sul sito web del nostro Dipartimento di Scienze Politiche, sulla Dispo Web TV, per chi fosse interessato a rivedere alcuni momenti. Prego Maria.
Io credo che il presidente del nostro ordine degli psicologi debba dire qualcosa a questo proposito. Il dottor Di Giorgio. Sì. No, ti dico che sono. Sì.
Se no spostiamoci dai, così più facile.
Sì, sì.
Okay.
Buonasera a tutti e grazie per l'invito alla professoressa Sinatra, al professor Trigiani. Non è stato facile seguire un po' tutto l'intervento, perché sicuramente questo è un tema che meriterebbe un approfondimento anche di più giornate, soprattutto per quello che sta accadendo negli ultimi anni con l'utilizzo delle tecnologie e con i social, perché i social hanno cambiato un po' le nostre vite e negli ultimi anni e nei prossimi 5 anni si stima che modificheranno anche lo scenario relazionale, per cui tutto questo è collegato anche all'online addiction, che è oggetto oggi di approfondimento. Diciamo che come ordine noi ci stiamo interessando, stiamo cercando di intervenire soprattutto a livello di prevenzione, perché abbiamo visto che le nuove dipendenze in effetti hanno creato un po' di difficoltà anche a livello di interventi multidisciplinari che oggi un po' tutti i servizi non sono ancora pronti a gestire, nonostante si sta intervenendo con formazioni congiunte. Ultimamente la Regione ha destinato delle risorse per fare una formazione un po' a tutti gli operatori che si occupano di nuove dipendenze e che soprattutto le addiction online. E quindi lo scenario ci deve far riflettere. Io mentre ascoltavo, per quanto sono riuscito a recepire, anche perché era abbastanza veloce, è chiaro che numerose suggestioni mi sono venute e riflettevo un po' su quello che effettivamente dovremmo cominciare un po' insieme con tutte le professioni a fare. E diciamo che la prima cosa che mi è venuta un po', riflettevo, è come diciamo, l'identità, i processi identitari sono cambiati, quindi mentre fino a qualche anno fa l'identità anche online virtuale, quindi era un po' un modo per nascondersi, per avere un'altra identità che non fosse quella reale, oggi effettivamente siamo al contrario, cioè si utilizza soprattutto l'online per parlare di sé, per raccontarsi, per diffondere qualsiasi cosa si fa a livello proprio quotidiano. Quindi credo che tutto questo abbia portato poi a un azzeramento fra l'offline e l'online. E quindi diciamo che anche la necessità che si è creata di utilizzare strumenti come il telefonino, ad esempio, ha fatto sì che tutto ciò che inizialmente non era un bisogno lo è diventato. Lo è diventato perché attraverso anche questi mezzi noi stiamo vedendo un po' di cambiamenti a livello di processi di socializzazione. Cioè sono cambiati i processi di socializzazione, riusciamo a stare meglio insieme nella rete, a utilizzare la rete anche per... si parlava di dipendenza dal sesso e anche dipendenza attraverso internet, e non invece di persona. Quindi dobbiamo interrogarci come possiamo intervenire per poter prevenire poi fenomeni come questi, che sono in forte espansione e in forte cambiamento. Ho pensato anche, mentre ascoltavo, al fenomeno dell'ikikomori, di cui tanto si sta parlando ultimamente e che pare si stia avvicinando anche in Italia. Non è la balena blu, di cui tanto si è parlato e poi abbiamo visto che era anche utilizzato mediaticamente. Il fenomeno dell'ikikomori non è altro che una sorta di anoressia relazionale, potremmo definirla, cioè l'isolamento sociale, quindi l'allontanamento delle relazioni, che porta poi ad avere idee suicidarie, che porta ad utilizzare prevalentemente strumenti come la rete, come internet, per isolarsi completamente, fino a slatentizzare quello che è un percorso, diciamo, evolutivo adolescenziale, in cui ci sono episodi depressivi, ma che possono diventare patologia, che non sono patologia, che sono, diciamo, fisiologici per quell'età, ma che diventano poi patologie e possono portare anche al suicidio. Quindi io credo che la cosa più importante in questo momento è fare formazione per gli operatori, perché la formazione, soprattutto in un'ottica multidisciplinare, vede anche trattamenti che debbano considerare diversi aspetti della vita, diversi aspetti anche della persona, del quotidiano. E nei servizi delle dipendenze patologiche, che adesso si chiamano SERD, non si chiamano più SERD, ci sono dei protocolli, ma siamo ancora nella fase sperimentale, perché tengono anche in considerazione le diversità territoriali, diversi contesti di appartenenza sociali. Ci sono dei protocolli che prevedono comunque l'intervento di diverse figure sociosanitarie che entrano, anche relativamente al gioco d'azzardo per esempio, ma si stanno avvicinando a questi servizi anche persone che hanno dipendenza affettiva, che hanno dipendenza dal sesso per esempio, così come quello che accade nel mondo del gambling, che adesso si chiama GAP, e così come relativamente al cyberbullismo, che è oggetto fondamentale in questo momento di intervento, e per cui si chiede aiuto soprattutto agli psicologi solo quando sono già accaduti degli episodi, ma non invece a quello che si potrebbe fare prima. Quindi la formazione è la prima cosa più importante, che dovrebbe mettere insieme diverse figure, diverse realtà che possano contaminarsi l'uno con l'altro, perché abbiamo bisogno l'uno dell'altro in maniera da approfondire e poter essere di aiuto, se siamo in relazioni d'aiuto. Ma la cosa anche fondamentale è la prevenzione, per cui la prevenzione va fatta, perché grazie alla prevenzione si possono ridurre i costi. Il GAP per esempio è uno degli esempi in cui, oltre ad essere l'Italia la terza nazione a livello mondiale che sta utilizzando questo tipo di situazioni, ma anche sta aumentando a livello adolescenziale, e la Puglia è una delle regioni in cui i dati ci dicono che sono soprattutto i minorenni che utilizzano il gioco online. E purtroppo anche avvicinandosi a contesti devianti, perché poi un minorenne, sappiamo tutti, non può entrare nelle sale slot, ma lo fa utilizzando documenti dei propri genitori, per esempio, e falsificando il tutto, con chiaramente la collusione dei centri stessi, di chi gestisce questi centri. Ci sono le leggi regionali che hanno anche disposto una serie di indicazioni relativamente all'apertura di questi centri, che devono avere delle distanze da scuole eccetera, ma tutto questo non basta. Io credo che dovremmo cominciare a pensare di fare una prevenzione seria, entrando nelle scuole di ogni ordine e grado e cominciando a interessarci di relazioni, e quindi entrando nei processi di socializzazione per costruire dei legami sani di dipendenza, perché la dipendenza non ha soltanto un'accezione negativa, ma può essere un bisogno dell'essere umano, e quindi è necessario far sì che, lavorando in maniera preventiva e costruendo dei legami sani di dipendenza, che spesso purtroppo mancano perché oggi gli adulti non sono più punti di riferimento come prima e hanno necessità di interventi di supporto, chiamiamoli sostegno alla genitorialità, chiamiamoli come volete, insomma. L'ultimo episodio accaduto ieri, ne avete sentito parlare tutti quanti, di Santo Spirito, questa ragazza dodicenne che è stata violentata più volte da un gruppo, diciamo, di coetanei, anche qualcuno più grande, che poi è riuscita a denunciare il tutto ai genitori, che si sono immediatamente attivati, e quindi anche lì bisognerebbe intervenire con la prevenzione, con l'educazione alla socio-affettività, e soprattutto pensare ad azioni di supporto per gli adulti di oggi che hanno difficoltà a gestire l'adolescenza di oggi, perché è in repentino cambiamento, così come cambiano le tecnologie, e ci mettono anche in condizioni di cambiare anche modo di approcciarci alla realtà. Per cui entrare nei processi di socializzazione e fare in modo che già dalle scuole di ordine primarie si possano cominciare a lavorare, a costruire dei rapporti di dipendenza sani, per evitare che poi si abbiano da grandi o comunque già in adolescenza dei rapporti di dipendenza, o comunque ricorrere alla dipendenza patologica come diciamo patologia. Grazie.
Sì, credo che possa intervenire ora il professor Giulio Lancioni.
Well, I'm not an expert in the area, so I shouldn't be asking any question. But I would like to ask a simple question based on what you said. What struck me was the clear-cut kind of criteria you had to define addiction, and the enormous kind of, let's say, misjudgment and or confusion that there is on the international data. So essentially you have a set of criteria which are very clear for defining addiction, and you have a whole bunch of different data that you cannot possibly judge whether they are talking about addiction or not.
Absolutely.
So essentially we are in the middle of nowhere in a way or other. And being a guy that is interested in applied research and applied intervention anyway, I imagine that if you were to be thinking about any kind of intervention procedure, you would be nowhere really, because you have the southeastern country, Asian countries where there is that kind of, let's say, negativity associated with any kind of thing that is distracting the person from the measured things. And then you have all the other countries that are using criteria that are quite different and or quite unreliable in a way or other. And then essentially, where are we? And one final question. Having you been so successful in publishing so many papers and all that, how can you relate the fact that you are cited so much and you could not make, or you could not really get some people to revise their own pretty loose kind of criteria?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the first thing I would say is that when we talk about intervention, we do have to look at things cross-culturally, and it isn't a case of one size fits all. Having said that, stuff that's happening, for instance, in Taiwan, there's some really good kind of prevention initiatives that they've got that would actually translate well over into more westernized society. The second thing, the debates in the area, I don't think anybody in the area, I can't think of anyone that doesn't think that problematic gaming doesn't exist. But of course, there are some people that don't want to call it an addiction. So in terms of intervention, in fact, there's not a problem, because everybody in the field knows that there are a minority of people that are affected by excessive and problematic online shopping, sex, gambling, gaming. So in fact, in terms of the kind of overall interventions, there actually is, the arguments are basically what we call it rather than anything else. I mean, there are a lot of people who are saying that, yeah, those 9 criteria are right in the DSM, but they've worded them wrongly. There are some people who are just saying some of those criteria just shouldn't be in to start with. There's just, the level of debates are so pedantic and pernickety that, I don't think it's necessarily harming the area in terms of treatment and prevention, because we all agree that there is this small, whether the proportion is 1%, 5%, 0.5%, we all agree that there is some people who are negatively affected by these internet-related activities. So I think the academic debates are very different from the practical and applied debates. So I think that's good news from where, so it isn't as much of a mess as you think. In terms of me and my standing in the area, there's recently been a series of debates. So I wrote a paper and got 27 of my colleagues basically to put their names on my paper, and so another 12 people were arguing, and it's like there are different kind of factions and cliques. That just happens in academia and all the way around. That never stops. But I do think the field is moving forward, because I think we've come from that this doesn't really exist to we now admit it does exist. There's a body of knowledge. We now have got some of the goals that we know in terms of neurobiological and neurochemical work now. We've got something like 25 studies now basically showing that the way the brain lights up is pretty much similar to substance and more traditional based addiction. So I don't think anybody's quibbling about that. Obviously we've got the large epidemiological studies, large representative sample sizes. The problem is, of course, all of those have used different instruments, but we all agree that a small, whether it's preoccupation or addiction, we agree that there is this small minority that need help. And so I don't think that the treatment and prevention is being harmed by the academic and pedantic debates that were taking place. So even though I've probably presented it quite negatively, I actually think in terms of the applied usefulness is that people are getting on, all over the world, almost every country has got some kind of prevention programs in place. Now, obviously I didn't understand the Italian was just speaking now, but one of the things that the translator was telling me was talking about how, for instance, the industry have to start taking more responsibility. Now, this has happened in the gambling industry. Okay, so the gambling industry now, if they want to get an operating license in Italy, in Great Britain, anywhere, they have to show what they're doing in terms of player protection. So Lottomatica, they hired me to write their social responsibility policies so that they could get a renewal of their license here. So they have to, they basically have to protect players, they have to minimize harm, but that is not happening in the gaming industry. That is not happening in Facebook and online, until government says you are operating a consumptive product that is problematic to a minority, until government say that is what they're doing, and if you want to carry on basically selling your goods or selling your services, you're going to have to get a license, and we won't give you that license until you show us what you're doing to protect those vulnerable and susceptible people. Now that happened, it's taken about 30 years in gambling for that to happen. I think it will happen in gaming, and I see it in the next 10 years, but to me that's just 10 years, it should be happening now. It will take ages in the social networking arena for Facebook, for instance, to be, for individual governments to say, you must start protecting your users from overuse of your products. But, but I've been in this area for 30 years. Things are moving forward. Yes, there are these horrible pedantic debates. And again, it means we get to publish more papers because somebody publishes a paper. I don't agree with that. You probably, and it goes back and forth. But honestly, I think there is far more good news than there is bad news in the area.
Good news, bad news.
Ok, fondamentalmente quello che diceva è che in realtà ciò che sta adesso succedendo è che nonostante ci siano tutti questi dibattiti, ci siano queste controversie all'interno, diciamo, del mondo accademico, nonostante tutto i trattamenti comunque vanno avanti, cioè l'elaborazione dei trattamenti stessi va avanti, e quindi si può vedere che anche in vari paesi ci sono dei programmi di prevenzione, però ciò nonostante c'è la questione da considerare adesso è che nel mondo del gioco d'azzardo c'è un qualcosa già ci sono già state implementate delle misure vere e proprie, come ad esempio parlava di ciò che è successo all'automatica in Inghilterra. Ad un certo punto a loro è stato richiesto di dimostrare cosa facevano per tutelare gli utenti del servizio, quindi hanno assunto lui proprio per elaborare una vera e propria politica in quella direzione. Invece ciò che sta succedendo adesso ancora con i social media, quindi con Facebook, Google e tutti gli altri big dei servizi online, è che le autorità competenti dei vari paesi all'interno dell'Unione Europea o comunque in cui loro operano non richiedono a questi fornitori di servizi online di dimostrare cosa loro stanno realmente facendo e cosa hanno intenzione di fare per proteggere gli utenti stessi. È sicuramente un qualcosa che impiegherà molto tempo, ci vorrà tanto tempo. Nel gioco d'azzardo ci sono voluti perlomeno 30 anni, si spera che anche nella rete di servizi online avvenga lo stesso nel corso di vari anni, anche se comunque lui è già consapevole del fatto che ci vorranno ancora tanti altri anni.
Bene. Io inviterei il dottor Cerniglia, Luca Cerniglia dell'Università Uninettuno di Roma, anche perché, scusate se lo faccio precedere, ma deve partire.
Grazie, scusate. It's been a very interesting lecture, and was very plenty of things to reflect on. I have maybe 10 questions, but I will cut down to 2, maybe 3, just simple ones. If I get it right, you are positing that there are very clear criteria to define an addiction and make a distinction from other forms of problematic behaviors.
I'm saying I've got very strict criteria, and that's because I'm one of the very few people that don't just study addiction in one area. So I publish papers on gambling addiction, sex addiction, exercise addiction. So when I talk about addiction, I want to make sure that the criteria that I'm using is consistent across all these behaviours. So I'm saying there are people who disagree with my criteria.
Yeah,
so
that's your position.
But they're my criteria until I think there is evidence that the criteria that I'm using are just completely wrong.
My question is, you think that these criteria could be different from if you look at different populations? I mean, adolescents, children, or adults, or are the same for every and each developmental stage? This is the first one.
Well, okay, the first question is that I think you could possibly, for instance, tolerance, you could redefine it for an adolescent population in a different way to an adult, for instance. But I still believe that the general concept of tolerance is invariant across all the different age categories. We all know that, in terms of any behaviour, there are critical periods where some behaviours have more of an impact on other things. But I think when we talk about, I always teach my students, you have to have an operational definition of whatever it is that you're describing. And if we want to use the word addiction, okay, that the criteria have to go right across the developmental age span. But that doesn't mean that within those set criteria there can't be nuances and differences. And I think we're starting to see that in lots of the different addictions that I've researched in, is that there are quite clearly, for instance, what would count as a problem. I know from gambling, for instance, what would count as a problematic behaviour So things like truanting from school, which we know is linked with problematic gambling, we can't apply that to adults because they're not at school, or at least. So yeah, there are differences in how you might interpret those criteria, but I personally think if we're going to call something an addiction, we need strict criteria, and those strict criteria should be invariant across the lifespan.
Thank you. Just another one. You think there are a specificity, there are something that you can call specific to smartphones, or these things you are talking about are the same of all the media you can use?
Right. Okay, well I've just published a few papers on so-called smartphone addiction, and my attitude there, it's almost the same as the internet addiction, because people aren't addicted to their smartphones, they're addicted to activities that they can do on their smartphones. And again, there might be some people, and I include my own daughter in this, who cannot function without her mobile phone. You know, but the thing is, when we take her on holiday and there's no Wi-Fi, within 2 or 3 days, she's just back to how she was. She's clearly not addicted to it, and it is more about the fear of missing out, the fact that she just doesn't like to know that she's missing out on things. But that's not an addiction. We know that fear of missing out is associated with smartphone addiction. But again, my thing is, again, even though I've published papers on smartphone, you know, we've just published a big European cross-cultural study on mobile phone dependence. But the thing is, people are not addicted to the mobile phones. If they are addicted, it's to particular applications on it. So the same arguments for internet addiction, for me, hold for smartphone addiction as well. And the irony is, of course, I don't think we should even call them phones. The one activity that adolescents don't do on their phones is talk to anybody. You know, we should start calling what it is. I mean, it's basically a mini computer, you know, and of which you can theoretically phone, but most people don't use it for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Il professor Pasquale Chianura, che è direttore della scuola Metafora di terapia familiare, family therapy, anche lì.
Buonasera a tutti, volevo portare una breve esperienza clinica, faccio il clinico, degli ultimi 4-5 anni, quando mi sono cimentato nel trattamento dei soggetti con questo tipo di problematica. Cominciamo col dire che c'è un'oscillazione dell'età, si parte dai quindicenni e si arriva ai settantenni, e mi sono ritrovato proprio come quando ho cominciato nei primi anni 70, in cui lavoravo con le famiglie con membro psicotico o famiglie con membro tossicodipendente. Con una differenza, che questo tipo di paziente è veramente molto difficile e non viene mai spontaneamente, ha una notevole resistenza alla terapia e è quasi impossibile un lavoro individuale. Per cui ho lavorato prevalentemente con le famiglie e credo che sia allo Stato l'unica maniera di approcciare questo tipo di problema, accanto ad un altro approccio che ormai diciamo che è abbastanza diffuso in Italia. Pensate, il gruppo dei giocatori anonimi è partito nel 1957 a Los Angeles, proprio sulla stessa dimensione organizzativa e strutturale di quello che sono stati gli alcolisti anonimi. E così come accadde per gli alcolisti anonimi quando era l'unica maniera per affrontare questo tipo di problema, così è stato ed è ancora oggi, perché in ogni città, anche in Italia, si sono organizzati questi gruppi che probabilmente sono quelli che cercano di lavorare meglio o di fare qualche cosa di positivo. Per cui, come vedete, le polarità di questo continuum sono la psicoterapia da una parte e poi questa dimensione solidale, per non dire amicale, che caratterizza un gruppo di giocatori anonimi. Ovviamente qui con tante altre problematiche, perché in questo tipo di problema il tutoraggio sia economico sia legale è obbligatorio, anche quando facciamo, come ho fatto in questi anni ultimi, terapia familiare con soggetti giocatori d'azzardo patologico. Questo per darvi anche un'idea di qual è la situazione, diciamo, clinica, nel senso dell'approccio terapeutico che possiamo cercare di costruire oggi, perché il trattamento che si deve immaginare deve essere sempre multimodale. Per cui, proprio per dire subito che un lavoro classico di psicoterapia individuale non serve assolutamente. Multimodale significa tante terapie, anche di coppia, oltre che di famiglia, e talvolta si è costretti anche ad usare terapie farmacologiche, addirittura ricoveri in SPDC, in reparti psichiatrici. Dipende ovviamente dalla situazione del caso, e quindi volevo darvi proprio questo flash clinico su come è complesso questo tipo di approccio e come in effetti fortunatamente si sono organizzate anche nella stessa città molti gruppi, a Bari ne abbiamo almeno 4 o 5, molti gruppi di giocatori anonimi. Che cosa posso prevedere per il futuro? Io credo molto, perché ho fatto molte esperienze a livello di approccio multifamiliare, e credo molto in questo tipo di approccio, specialmente da quando nei servizi pubblici non si fa più psicoterapia. I servizi pubblici sono diventati ormai soltanto distributori di farmaci, perché non ci sono più psicoterapeuti, non ci sono più psicologi, che quando vanno in pensione non vengono più sostituiti. Per cui è una situazione drammatica. Allora, se noi riusciamo ad insegnare questo lavoro multifamiliare, che credo sia l'approccio più squisito, più significativo per questo tipo di famiglia patologica o di famiglia con un membro patologico come il giocatore d'azzardo, credo che questo possa notevolmente facilitare proprio un lavoro terapeutico che può durare anche molti mesi, così come abbiamo esperienze in passato di questo lavoro con le anoressie mentali, con le psicosi schizofreniche, ma anche fondamentalmente con le vecchie tossicodipendenze. Quindi ci tenevo un po' a farvi questo tipo di flash. Grazie.
Faccio una precisazione, siccome per le 6:15 dovremmo chiudere, pregherei di fare domande piuttosto veloci al professor Griffith. Si sono prenotati il dottor Vavalle, Gaetano Vavalle, e credo anche il dottor Frateschi. Allora, se per piacere.
Allora, sono un operatore dei servizi pubblici. Le faccio una domanda innanzitutto per segnalarle diciamo, il bassissimo livello di presenza clinica relativa alle persone che soffrono nella relazione con le tecnologie. E poi credo che sia indispensabile sviluppare anche delle metodiche per un riconoscimento precoce di questi disturbi, dato che oltre alla prevenzione indispensabile sarebbe molto utile poter avere dei criteri chiari, semplici, in modo da mettere nelle condizioni la cultura di un popolo di poter evidenziare in forma precoce un intervento adeguato. Per quanto riguarda, ripeto, le presenze cliniche sono molto ridotte e sono soprattutto di ragazzi in giovane età. Nei servizi pubblici personalmente sono circa 15 anni che mi occupo di nuove dipendenze, non è mai capitato una persona in età avanzata che presentava questo genere di problema. E per finire, una cosa che potrebbe essere interessante da evidenziare è che spesso le famiglie che hanno questo tipo di disturbo tendono a transitare, anziché su un tavolo di tipo sanitario, come quello che potrebbe essere il tavolo psicoterapeutico, il tavolo del sostegno, del supporto psicologico, al tavolo delle separazioni legali, che spesso nasconde invece problematiche di tipo sanitario.
Was there actually a question in there?
No, c'è una domanda per caso per
Vorrei
lui.
sapere se c'è un'esperienza a tal proposito in Inghilterra.
Okay. So is there a similar experience to what he said in the UK?
I would actually say in the UK we've got next to nothing in terms of prevention or anything to do with online addictions. We have very good services for online gambling, but when it comes to particularly gaming, social networking, these are just not issues that people are taking seriously. Schools take them seriously. I go into lots of schools because this is an issue for teachers, because they see it that their kids are on their mobile phones instead of looking at the teacher and learning. But in terms of prevention, in terms of helping, getting this just to be recognised by the government as a serious issue, it's just not there yet. I hope it will come, but I still don't think it's there yet. I do far more of my work abroad than I do in the UK. But thank you for the comments. I think they were very good comments.
Traducono?
Sì.
Quindi ciò che stava dicendo è che nel Regno Unito, in Inghilterra in maniera particolare, ciò che viene assegnato in termini di risorse è quasi nullo. Quindi ciò che succede è che ci sono sicuramente dei programmi di prevenzione per quanto riguarda il gioco d'azzardo online, però per quanto invece riguarda la dipendenza da internet, soprattutto la dipendenza da smartphone, diciamo che alla fine dei conti non c'è niente. Ciò che lui fa in maniera attiva è cercare di coinvolgere le scuole, e lì il feedback che lui riceve è molto positivo, è molto alto, perché gli stessi insegnanti si rendono conto del fatto che i ragazzini sono più impegnati a guardare il telefonino piuttosto che ad apprendere. Quindi c'è sicuramente molto da fare, soprattutto nell'ambito della prevenzione. Lui spera che un giorno tutto questo arrivi, però per ora c'è ancora tanto da fare. Va bene, la ringraziamo anche per l'intervento e per la domanda interessante.
Allora, la professoressa Menarda Petro dell'Università di Durazzo, Moisu, vorrebbe fare una domanda.
She's a professor from a university.
About gambling addiction, we have social players, problematic players, and pathological one. What about the internet addiction? Are these the same, the levels, or are other levels?
The simple answer, yes, because everything's on a continuum. You are certainly going to get some people who would be described as at risk of internet addiction, showing some signs of problematic behaviour without it necessarily being pathological. I think the internet addiction field is about 20 years behind the gambling field. And we learn, even though people criticise that we use similar types of criteria from gambling and adapt it to internet addiction, to be honest, these are still behavioural addictions, and we can learn a lot, because gambling for me is the breakthrough addiction. I think a lot of people now accept that gambling can become a genuine addiction, and if you accept that gambling can become an addiction, this is a behaviour that doesn't involve drugs, and so therefore there's no reason why we shouldn't look at social networking addiction or gaming addiction or shopping addiction or sex addiction. The problem is, of course, is that you can use the word addiction and apply it to everything. You know, you can say this book is addictive reading, and the problem is the word addiction is being watered down. But in terms of your question, I do think we're becoming more sophisticated now in terms of looking at kind of subclinical levels, that there are people that have some problems, but it's not necessarily affecting all of their lives. But again, it will just be more, but most of the research that's done is either surveys where they do particular screens. Once we've got screens that look at-risk populations as well, and they've been validated, we'll get more of that type of work. I mean, what was interesting in the gambling field, in 2001, there was a new screen, the Problem Gambling Severity Index, and once that was being used worldwide, suddenly we had this category of at-risk gambler, and that could happen for gaming and internet addictions more generally. Okay.
Il professor Frateschi, Massimo. Sì.
Vuole che traduca? Quindi ciò che alla fine succede con internet adesso è che una cosa che comunque si può riconoscere è che internet rispetto al gioco d'azzardo si trova perlomeno 20 anni indietro, quindi tutto ciò che è stato fatto nel gioco d'azzardo man mano si spera che poi venga fatto anche con la dipendenza da internet, dai contenuti online. Quindi ciò che lui vede appunto come aspetto molto positivo, come situazione davvero che può cambiare tutto, è il riconoscimento della dipendenza dai giochi d'azzardo come una vera e propria dipendenza. Ciò significa che abbiamo una dipendenza da un qualcosa che non è una sostanza come può essere una qualsiasi droga, ma appunto è una dipendenza da diciamo qualcos'altro, e quindi ciò può appunto portare poi gradualmente a riconoscere che anche la dipendenza da internet è una dipendenza vera e propria, una vera e propria patologia.
Quello che sta dicendo.
Ok, quindi poi detto che ci sono stati poi degli studi a livello mondiale che hanno portato gradualmente anche al riconoscimento di questo fenomeno e di questa patologia stessa. Quindi ciò che lui stesso si auspica è appunto che gradualmente anche la dipendenza da internet venga riconosciuta come una patologia, come ciò che succede con il gioco d'azzardo.
Sì, credo che voglia intervenire anche il dottor Sabino Di Chio.
Sì, qualche anno fa, una centinaia di anni fa, Christopher Lasch scrisse un libro, si chiamava La cultura del narcisismo, perché vedeva che notò che una patologia psicologica riusciva a definire un tratto collettivo, un tratto della società di quel periodo. E io credo che la stessa cosa si possa fare adesso con l'addiction, con le dipendenze. Possiamo tratteggiare una cultura della dipendenza e per farlo faccio riferimento per esempio a un passo di Anthony Giddens nel suo libro Runaway World, quando lui dice che ci possiamo affidare alla ripetizione e alla costrizione tipiche della dipendenza per congelare la pesante autonomia decisionale nel quale ci troviamo a vivere nella società contemporanea dopo quello che lui chiama un lungo processo di detradizionalizzazione, e che il digitale sicuramente enfatizza, sicuramente dilata. Da un lato c'è la libertà di accesso totale, l'illimitatezza delle opportunità, addirittura di poter cambiare identità quando si vuole, e dall'altro c'è sempre meno tempo per poter consolidare una certezza, per poter consolidare qualcosa, un'autonomia. Quindi il mare diventa sempre più grande e dall'altro lato la barca diventa sempre più piccola, la barca dell'identità diventa sempre più piccola. Allora la mia domanda è questa: nella sua esperienza quotidiana di rapporto, di relazione con i pazienti, lei ha notato una correlazione tra la propensione alla dipendenza e la vicinanza alle fonti di incertezza della società contemporanea. Parlo in termini economici, parlo in termini di relazioni familiari, di reti amicali. E lei crede che esista ultimamente un aumento delle dipendenze o semplicemente ce ne preoccupiamo di più?
Okay, I'll try. Sorry, I'm not sure I got the whole of your question there. The first thing is I don't treat people. I'm a researcher, so I'm not a practitioner, so I don't have patients or clients, so I can't answer from that perspective. If your question is about are we seeing more addictions, I mean, the interesting thing was, in 2011, myself and Steve Sussman, we published a massive paper. It was 54 pages long in a journal, which is very unusual to have that many in a journal. And we looked at 11 particular behaviors, and we said that at any one, based on all the research that had been done across these 11 different addictive behaviors, at any one time, around about 41% of people are addicted to something, which does suggest that we have become an addictive society. But again, it all comes down to how you define addiction in the first place. You know, what you talked about is not really my area of expertise, so I can only speculate. But of course, I do believe that we as human beings, we seek out activities that make us feel better. And of course now there are lots and lots of activities that make us feel very good, and the more accessible these activities that make us feel good, you've always got a chance that on a reinforcement and rewarding level is that some of those people will become addicted to things that we never thought could be addictive in the first place. Sorry, it's not a very good answer.
Okay, lui innanzitutto cercava di capire se aveva capito la tua domanda. Lui praticamente la sua domanda, mi scusi. Lui praticamente chiedeva, cioè parlava del fatto che non tratta pazienti, quindi non è un clinico e quindi è solo un ricercatore, quindi non ha a che fare con i pazienti, pertanto non può rispondere diciamo, a quel tipo di domanda. Però per quanto riguarda invece la dipendenza e come fenomeno, se sta appunto aumentando, lui sicuramente le può rispondere di sì, perché ha notato in uno studio che loro hanno, in un articolo che loro hanno recentemente pubblicato, un articolo di 54 pagine che appunto c'era questa tendenza all'interno della società. Si analizzavano 11 tipi di dipendenze all'interno di questo articolo stesso, e appunto una cosa che lui stesso crede è che per sua natura l'uomo cerca attività che possano farlo star bene, da cui lui possa trarre beneficio. Quindi pertanto crede appunto che sia possibile che gli esseri umani alla fine sviluppino dipendenze, e che anche sviluppino dipendenze da cose che in realtà fino a poco tempo fa non immaginavamo nemmeno. Quindi proprio per questo la risposta che lui alla fine dà è che sicuramente c'è un aumento di queste dipendenze, e ci sarà anche un aumento di queste dipendenze in futuro.
La professoressa Sandra Pizzarotti vuol fare una domanda. Prego.
Più che una domanda devo ringraziare, perché da quello che il professore poc'anzi ha detto, riferendosi alle sostanze, alle tossicodipendenze, per quanto riguarda la dipendenza è un'altra sostanza, la sostanza fluida, che consente anche per alcuni aspetti all'emersione dei sé nascosti. Il problema è, come poc'anzi il collega mi pare che abbia fatto riferimento al supporto genitoriale e alla complessità della vicenda, perché l'uomo è un essere complesso ed è difficile definizione, per cui la dipendenza è la dipendenza, c'è sempre, bisogna vedere il livello, come e quale sostanza sta ad indicare. Per questo ringrazio, perché si tratta di una sostanza che non è solo virtuale, per molti aspetti è reale. Grazie.
Okay, is there a question there?
C'è una domanda a riguardo o è solo il ringraziamento? No, just thank you, yeah. Just to thank you.
Sostanza comunque.
No.
Okay, so
No.
just what she appreciated about the speech is that it's a substance that you say that online addiction is a substance, it's a fluid substance, but it's a substance.
Okay, I mean, I personally don't see it as a substance because I define a substance as something physical, but I accept your analogy, but I don't, for me it's not, virtual addictions are not substance addictions by my definition, but I kind of agree with your comment.
Okay, lui dice fondamentalmente che lui non la considera una sostanza vera e propria, però comprende comunque l'analogia che lei ha fatto e quindi capisce. Esatto, sì, però lui nelle sue definizioni non la considera una vera e propria sostanza, come possono essere le droghe o altre sostanze che provocano. Esatto, sì. Mm-hmm. She says that she doesn't consider it as a tangible substance, it's more of a fluid substance.
I've got nothing to answer to that.
Allora,
Okay.
il dottor Antonio Nappi dell'Ordine degli assistenti sociali della Puglia.
Grazie, anch'io ringrazio per i saluti del Consiglio dell'Ordine per questa iniziativa interessante, per le riflessioni del professor Griffith. Io mi limito solo a dire questo, che un paio d'anni fa la Regione Puglia ha pubblicato una ricerca sull'universo giovanile, una ricerca accurata che insomma ha investigato un po' tutto l'universo giovanile, e i giornali, i nostri quotidiani hanno ripreso la notizia dell'abbassamento dell'età, il primo impatto con l'alcol, gli spinelli, le sostanze stupefacenti nei ragazzini. In realtà il dato più tremendo, più terribile, insomma più angosciante è proprio il senso di vuoto che invece i ragazzi, specialmente le femminucce, diciamo, stiamo parlando di adolescenti, denunciavano in questa ricerca, un senso di vuoto, un senso di inutilità, che probabilmente poi è all'origine dell'uso delle sostanze e anche dell'abbassamento del primo impatto con le sostanze. Io credo che, insomma, quello che vado dicendo, questa è una domanda, se vogliamo, un po' retorica al professor Griffith, un po' così astratta, se lui è d'accordo con questa mia ipotesi, cioè che noi non facciamo sufficiente prevenzione al benessere, alla felicità, allo stare insieme sin dall'età insomma della scolarizzazione, delle prime esperienze di socializzazione. Non c'è un'abitudine del nostro universo educativo verso l'idea di un benessere e un'educazione alla condivisione, alla non competitività dei nostri sistemi, per cui ovviamente l'impatto poi con le tecnologie soddisfa insomma un bisogno di identità, come è stato detto, un bisogno di riconoscersi, anche ciò che diceva Antonio Di Gioia rispetto al mettere su internet tutto quello che uno fa, le fotografie eccetera, postare, no? Questo rincorrere il quotidiano, che spesso però diventa anche vuoto. Volevo chiedere al professor Griffith, appunto, se ho capito che anche in Inghilterra politiche non ce ne sono e siamo messi male, insomma, come welfare. Speravo che in Inghilterra, patria del welfare, ci fosse qualcosa di più, ma se questa ipotesi di lavorare ad una, io la chiamo una epidemiologia del benessere, della felicità, insomma, se può essere un antidoto all'uso sia delle sostanze sia dell'online addictions.
In short, all I can answer, I have no idea. Sorry.
Non sa con esattezza quale potrebbe essere.
I've done no research. I've done no research on that, so I can't answer that with any kind of expertise. Sorry.
Okay, non ha effettuato nessuna ricerca a riguardo, pertanto non ha le competenze per rispondere a questa domanda.
Allora, come ultima domanda, credo che non ci siano più domande, è il professor Frateschi, Massimo Frateschi, psicoanalista.
Grazie innanzitutto al professor Griffiths per questa Lectio Magistralis e devo dire grazie anche per quello che è stato lo sforzo dell'Università di Scienze Politiche, anche del Dipartimento e di tutto lo staff della professoressa Sinatra, ma vorrei provare a fare una domanda un po' più specifica per quanto riguarda anche le ricerche del professor Griffiths su uno dei criteri, dei 6 criteri a cui ha fatto riferimento, e cioè sul conflitto. Almeno per quanto mi riguarda dal punto di vista psicoterapeutico, l'esperienza a livello anche specifico con più casi clinici, quindi su un orientamento psicodinamico, può dare forse dei risultati migliori rispetto a quanto anche giustamente da un altro punto di vista esprimeva il professor Chianura, e quindi mi interessa particolarmente l'aspetto del conflitto in relazione al risvolto intrapsichico e all'altro risvolto interpersonale, e quindi come il metodo, la valutazione da parte del professor Griffiths si è sviluppata eventualmente su queste due valenze, la valenza intrapsichica e la valenza interpersonale in ragione del criterio del conflitto. Grazie.
Sorry, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Dunque, rispetto al criterio del conflitto, se sono stati sviluppati degli studi che possono riguardare queste due valenze, cioè di un conflitto interpersonale, quindi relativamente alle relazioni con gli altri, o la valenza del conflitto intrapsichico e quindi delle situazioni di contrasto interno da parte del soggetto.
So we would like to understand if, with regards to conflict in particular, if you have developed studies dealing with focusing on interpersonal conflict and interpsychic conflict as well. So in a conflict.
The short answer is no.
Ok, la sua risposta è no, cioè non ha effettuato quel tipo di ricerche.
Sorry, I'm getting really uncomfortable.
Grazie.
Burning up.
Because of your approach.
Sorry?
Because of your approach. He is a psychoanalytic.
Sorry, I don't understand.
The problem.
So I'm really burning up here now. I'm really, really uncomfortable, and I think it's affecting my thinking.
Yeah. Allora credo che possiamo chiudere questa serata. Mi tocca ringraziare innanzitutto il professor Trigiani che ha permesso non solo oggi, l'organizzazione di oggi, ma anche in passato, ormai da un po' di tempo che ci stiamo occupando delle addiction. Tutti quelli che hanno partecipato e credo attivamente alla discussione, e non in ultimo il professor Griffith, col quale ormai stiamo lavorando da un po' di tempo. Lo ringrazio soprattutto per la sua pazienza che ha nel seguire i nostri lavori, nel seguire i miei allievi. Mi auguro che oggi, come in passato, sia semplicemente l'inizio di un futuro, non dico in comune date le distanze, ma in un rapporto ancora più stretto proprio per la problematica dell'online addiction, per la verità molto poco ancora studiata, soprattutto in Italia e nell'Italia meridionale, come dimostra la presenza di pochissimi partecipanti alla cosa. Infatti quando io ho diffuso la notizia non dico che le persone l'hanno accolta con sorriso, ma non si sono abbastanza preoccupati perché continuano a dare ai bambini di 2 anni il loro smartphone e le conseguenze le vedremo tra qualche anno. Avrei invitato volentieri i pedagogisti bioetici a parlare, sarà in una prossima occasione. Per cui ringrazio tutti e arrivederci presto. Ringrazio anche e soprattutto i miei colleghi dell'Albania, sia dell'Università di Elbasan sia dell'Università di Durazzo, che sono corse molto interessate, tutte e 5 come sono sedute lì, compreso il rettore che è alle prese di una convenzione ora col nostro rettore, molto interessate alla faccenda e con le quali credo che in futuro lavoreremo in maniera ancora più significativa di quanto sta succedendo nell'Italia meridionale. Grazie anche a voi. Arrivederci, a presto.